Do you feel stuck writing uninspiring songs and don't seem to be getting any better? The truth is, you're probably making one or more songwriting mistakes that block your potential. Repeating these mistakes can trap you inside of a creative box, and as time goes on, the box gets harder and harder to break out of. I've been writing songs for a long time. I've written a lot of good songs and even more bad ones. But my very best songs were written when I eliminated these three mistakes because my creativity hit new highs and my songs got better faster. So in this video I'm going to tell you what these mistakes are so you can identify them, and in doing so smash your way out of the box, become the musician you're meant to be and start writing great songs today. The first reason songwriters get stuck in a creative box is with mistake number one. This is Jane, and for some reason she's got no head. That's better. Anyway, when she sits down to write a song, she gets very academic about it and plans every part of the song. Refers to a music theory and a chord theory, spends a long time and a lot of brain power and grinds through making her masterpiece. When she listens back to her song later on, she feels deflated because it reminds her of a backing track or a song she's heard before 100 times. Behind that smile, she's actually quite frustrated. This is Rob. When he writes a song, he thinks as little as possible, just picks up the guitar and starts making music. But when he listens back to the song idea later, he either loves it or thinks it's okay, but there's nearly always an interesting section, and it always sounds like his own unique style. Surely Jane's approach would produce better song ideas because she's using real formal techniques that have been established, and they're the foundational skills required to write great songs, right? Wrong. The truth is you can learn all the chord theory and all the harmonic theory and the scales, and you'll get better at them, but that isn't what songwriting actually is. Just like learning all the big words in the dictionary isn't going to make you a great communicator, learning all the scales isn't necessarily going to make you a great songwriter. In fact, I'd go as far as to say all of this education is actually hurting you, not helping. Because if you want to become more musically creative, then you want your mind to be open and not limited by ideas of what is and what is not acceptable in your songs, especially in the early stages. And to obsess over formal music theory is to put yourself inside a framework, which is the exact same box most other songwriters are putting themselves into. And what kind of songs are most likely going to get produced inside of a formal academic box of music theory? Songs that sound like they came out of the box, more of the box. There's so many advantages to freeing yourself from this limiting framework and just writing songs through your own personal tastes, because it really frees you up to experiment and find out what comes through in your songwriting. And some of you are probably thinking, well, you can still do music theory and experiment with song ideas. And that is true. But what is also true is the more you focus on music theory, the more you study music theory, the more you will unconsciously use it, and it will seep into your ideas, and you're more likely to write things that are more cookie cutter and more formally acceptable than real true creativity. I think if you distance yourself from academia and the formal structures, then your creative mind gets more of a say in your writing process, and you'll produce more interesting song ideas. And that makes for the fertile ground for something interesting and original to happen musically, and where a real unique style can develop. I guess I'm with Paul McCartney here by saying that I'm with the school of the instinctive. And related to that and about songwriting, he said, "You never get it down. I don't know how to do this. You'd think I do, but it's not one of these things you ever really know how to do." The suggestion there being, with songwriting there is no formula, and there's no amount of book smarts can instruct you on how to be a good songwriter and produce great songs. It's just that over time you get better at honing that chaos down and refining it into something that makes sense and hopefully says something new. All this is to say that a good understanding of music theory doesn't necessarily translate into good songwriting. It's not an equation where you apply the same formula every time to find the right answer. Rather, use theory as an accessory to your songwriting, but not the focal point, using only as much of it as necessary to get the job done. Lean away from theory and instead lean into yourself and trust yourself to find the answers. Get in there and start to create, be expressive, create freely, be playful and experimental, because that is where the great song ideas are actually found. Because writing a good song is so much more than just opening a textbook, it's about you becoming the open book. However, if your book is a cheap magazine, then your song ideas are going to be stale and uninspiring. So if you want to write some fresh and exciting songs, let's look at mistake number two. To understand this, first think about some of the amazing paintings from the Renaissance. And if you were to go and visit some historic art gallery, the amazing vivid oil paintings that you would be able to witness. Paintings of such beauty and grandeur and expertise, it would take a lifetime of pure dedication to be able to rise to that level of skill that's on display. And then go to a modern art gallery and witness the peerless painting of a plain white canvas, or sculpture's finest moment of the unmade bed. Of course I'm joking, but it's easy to see that art has taken a nosedive in terms of its brilliance. It's like art became so technically good that it had to go in the other direction, and now to sort of rebel against those foundations that made art so good and to be almost bad on purpose has now set the new standard for what art is. And the same thing that's happened to art has also happened to a large percentage of mainstream music. I think what was once achieved through great songwriting is now done through technological means, and artists who rise to the top do so not because of great songwriting, because of a huge industry push and great marketing and financing behind them. So we find ourselves in a sea of auto-tuned, overproduced, spiritually empty music. And this stuff is like a designer drug. It has a certain polish to it that can make almost anything sound appealing. It's like tipping MSG, salt, fat and sugar into your cooking. It's the McDonald's of music, and it tricks people's brains through modern production techniques. This isn't some rational preference and a kind of meritocracy where the best songs rise to the top. People just nod along with what is placed in front of them by the industry. It's the point where the likes of Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran are being held up as some kind of songwriting royalty. And because of this, focusing on this modern era of songwriting in order to find your way to good songwriting is the fastest way to getting lost. Because what brought music to where it is today is the foundational skill of good songwriting, and that will never not be the most important part of a song. And that is to say, if you want to write great songs, stop looking at today's music for your inspiration and for the example, and go back to the roots of what created it all and study the amazing evolution of music in the 20th century before it mutated into what is modern pop music today. Because if good songwriting is what you care about, then the best place to look is back to a time when the songs had to be good because they didn't have the means to make the record good without that key piece in place. This was a time where songwriters were using classical music as a reference point and were surrounded by a rich and decadent culture that they could draw from. And this rich songwriting history is where we left off before we fell into the musical abyss that we find ourselves today. And if you can rediscover those secrets of the great songwriters, then you can pick up where they left off and carry the baton and take it forward. Many of you have probably got loads of good song ideas floating around in your head that have never made it into the world yet. And that could be because you want to wait until you're ready before you really start writing songs, so you don't make a mess of them and waste all of these good ideas that you've got before you're equipped with the tools you need to make them really good. You probably want to wait until your skills are good enough that your songs are really professional and impressive. But the thing is, in order to do that, you must first become prolific. And that comes through putting in the reps of writing song ideas, and lots of them, especially the bad ones. Because a bad song isn't a failure, it's another brick that you can stack up that will eventually become your castle. But it will only come about if you stop avoiding the reality of what becoming a good songwriter actually is. Because it's the willingness to fail and then get back up and keep going that will unlock all of this potential that you've got inside you. Because songwriting isn't so much about education, it's more about just application. Because too many people are just sitting on the sidelines, just taking in information as a substitute for actually writing songs and telling themselves that they're improving. And it's just never going to happen that way. And what all of this really amounts to in reality is a form of perfectionism. And perfectionism is just procrastination that's wearing a tuxedo. It's just a form of self-sabotage, and it'll keep you consuming information forever and producing nothing unless you make the active and conscious choice to do the thing that you're avoiding, and that's just writing the damn song.